If you're a mid-level to C-suite leader who wants to own your growth and figure out your next small, brave move to achieve your leadership goals, you are in the right place. Welcome to the Small Brave Moves podcast, a weekly deep dive on how to be braver in leadership and in life for exceptional results. I'm your host, Nicole Bianchi, best-selling author, certified master executive coach, NSA certified speaking professional, chief bravery officer, and tough talk expert. If you're ready to become a better, braver, and more authentic leader, let's dive in. Hello, friends and brave leaders. Welcome back to the Small Brave Moves podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Bianchi, Chief Bravery Officer and Tough Talk expert. In today's episode, we're going to discuss an essential topic for any leader, the 5 Tough Talks, which is my framework for how to lead brave conversations for exceptional results. So let's dive right in. Nobody enjoys having a tough conversation. They're uncomfortable, awkward, and can sometimes get heated. Yet these conversations are necessary both in our personal and professional lives. Today, we need to have a tough conversation about tough conversations. Listen, many of us struggle with them because we don't practice them enough and often don't know how to approach them effectively. Fear is usually what stops us. This shouldn't be a surprise to you. But we worry about how our conversation will be received, right? Whether we communicate it clearly, am I being clear and concise? Am I rambling? How might it impact that person? Will I damage the relationship even further? And sometimes there's that fear of regret, right? Of the conversation going so bad that it can be paralyzing and we get stuck. But I want you to think of the opportunities you might be missing by not having that conversation. When we let tough talks linger in our minds and swim around in our brains, we waste time and energy and diminish the potential impact of those conversations. Author Michael Bungay-Stainer, who I interviewed for the 5 Tough Talks, used a great analogy. He said, Nicole, waiting to have a tough conversation is like letting a stain set in your laundry. If you wait too long, the stain sets. And even with treatments, it never quite goes away. If you feel you should have a conversation, that's a clear sign you should. Treat the stain early. Wow, what a great analogy, right? That it just prompts you to go, yep, that makes complete sense. And sometimes leaders avoid these conversations altogether or delegate them to someone else. But that doesn't serve anyone either, especially the leader. And it's crucial to think about, how do I embrace that tough conversation to be more effective and exceptional in my role as a leader? One common approach people use is that feedback sandwich, where you start with a positive comment. You're so great. Like, I really appreciate all the stuff you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and slide in some critical feedback, right? And then I'm going to finish with another positive comment, but hey, keep up the good work. And listen, this method dilutes the impact of your message, and the person only hears the positive feedback, right? So keep them separate. Use positive feedback regularly so that when it is time for a tough talk, you can focus on the key issue and align on the desired outcome. In my experience, leading cultural transformations for 16 years with Fortune 300 companies, I've had to have countless tough talks. And as an executive coach for the past 18 years, I've seen the significant need for leaders to learn how to have these conversations effectively. Often, leaders bring me in because they've avoided the earlier tough conversations, the how we work, the ask, the what's going on, and now they're at this being better conversation, and they need help. But if they would have had the first 3, it would have prevented the need for my involvement. So my focus is on transforming tough talks into brave conversations. And I help leaders understand the 5 types of tough conversation that every leader needs to be so good at. How do you prepare? How do you practice? And how do you process them? And oh, by the way, how do you manage, right, your energy and mindset in the midst of having these conversations? And this leads to greater confidence, productivity, and impact on their teams and organizations. I know that if we can increase frequency in having brave conversations, and remember, bravery is an acquired behavior, takes practice. So if we increase the frequency on having the brave conversations, it'll increase our confidence. And when we increase our frequency and confidence, it leads to much stronger results. So, if you're struggling with difficult conversations, this episode will become your playbook for every tough talk you need to have in your professional and personal life. So, without further ado, here are the 5 types of tough talks that all leaders need to master for exceptional results. So, number 1, the how we work. This conversation really sets the foundation for how you and your team will work together. It involves aligning on the rules, routines, and rhythms needed for that strong performing collaboration. Unfortunately, many leaders skip this foundational step because they're so focused on the what we need to deliver, the strategy, the goals, the objectives, that they forget about the how we work, right? Which is how do we want to come together and show up for each other? And these conversations can happen one-on-one, up and down, right? Leader to team member, peer-to-peer, team member to team member. And then collectively as a team, we should all be thinking about what are those agreements that will lead to high-performing success. Once we know the rules, we know how to play by them. Number 2, the ask. And this involves requesting something from someone. So it could be clarity on priorities, specific help, mentorship. And I like to categorize the asks as asking for help, asking for permission, or asking for acknowledgement. And leaders often struggle with this because they're expected to be the experts, right? They have to have all the answers and be perfect all of the time. Wrong. And we're often as leaders discouraged from being vulnerable, right? That it looks like a sign of weakness if we have to make asks. And it makes it difficult for us to ask for assistance. But there's so much power in the ask. The third one is what's going on? This conversation explores changes in someone's behavior, performance, or maybe the relationship you have with them. And when you're noticing this shift, I don't want you to ignore it. Oftentimes we think about, well, I'll just give it a little bit of time and it'll take care of itself. Remember what Michael Bungay Standard said, treat the stain early. When you notice that shift, lean into it and have a simple conversation that starts with the what's going on. Be curious and address it promptly before it leads to a tough talk. Number 4, being better. This conversation addresses that reoccurring issue. So you're starting to see a pattern, right, in behavior or performance, and you're connecting other conversations and connecting the dots about what's going on. And really, you're shining a light on the issue and guiding the person towards improvement from a place of kindness and respect. And listen, when we're not at our best self, we need that help from our leader or coach to help us see that so we can do something about it. And the 5th conversation, moving on. And this is the toughest one. It's acknowledging that things just aren't working and determining that new path forward. And it often involves departure from either a position, a project, or maybe even a relationship. It requires us to loosen up that grip and think about what's possible. The how we work, the ask, and the what's going on conversations are generally easier to have than the being better and moving on conversations. But by being comfortable with the first 3, the other 2 end up being easier and less frequent because we're pro at them, right? We're having them all the time, and it becomes the way we do things. So I guide my clients on how to prepare for that tough talk, how to handle that messy middle, and pivot if the conversation isn't going as planned. And always end each conversation with accountability and action. What's that direction to drive the necessary change? I also help them build bravery and confidence. And my clients grow to understand that bolder, braver conversations lead to stronger connections and help us embrace a culture of positive conflict and honest communication. So if you're unsure whether you need to have a tough conversation, I want you to ask yourself these questions from Laura Abrash, chair of the board of directors at Deloitte. She said, number 1, ask yourself, is this a tough conversation I need to have, or is it someone else? Number 2, does it require immediate attention? And number 3, does it need my voice? It's a great process to think through when you're embarking on a tough conversation. And remember, bravery is a skill and leadership is an action. And I'm here to help you develop those skills to lead conversations with bravery and achieve those exceptional results. I hope this episode inspires you to consider if there's a tough talk that you've been avoiding. I encourage you to consider which of those 5 tough talks is most relevant right now to your situation and create an action plan to facilitate that tough talk, turning it into a brave conversation, as soon as possible. And remember to always come from a place of kindness and respect and put in the work to prepare and end with clear direction and accountability. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share with a friend. And until next time, keep making those small, brave moves towards better, braver, and more authentic leadership. And know I'm cheering you on every brave step of the way. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Small Brave Moves podcast. If you're wanting to take this work even deeper, I'm here to help. From engaging in inspirational keynote speeches to transformational coaching and workshops for leaders and teams, page-turning books, online courses, and enlightening leadership development retreats. There are so many ways that we can work together to take your leadership to the next level. For more information, check out the show notes, and let's do this together, one small brave move at a time. See you next week.